Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I'm pretty sure that my mic is now enabled. Let me just double check that one time. Here we go, mute. Yeah, so we're good. So now my mic is enabled, and you should also be able to see Visual Studio in the background. We've got some issues with the chat. I was trying to get it figured out, but it might be kind of difficult to do that. From what I discussed on with Hanselman was that that we can do questions on Twitter, and then we'd have to restart the Google Hangout in order to get any question and answers. We've got some suggestions of using a Jabber room. If anybody wants to create a Jabber room real quick, then we could use that. Let me try John Galloway sending me an example here. Let me see if I can do this real quick. QA app. Yeah, Hangout. Yep, click Q&A. Okay, once viewers start posting, yeah, click Q&A up. Yep. So this part I think had to be done before we actually started the Hangout. But let's try Twitter. I'm gonna keep monitoring Twitter, and then actually here now we've got this Jabber room. So let me go ahead and grab this Jabber room. I'm just gonna sign in, and then I'll give you the link to it as well. Internal server error. Just 1 second. I had an account here, Twitter. I just tried it. Let me try Google Plus, I guess. All right, here we go. Perfect. Okay, so we also have this Jabber room as well. So let me grab the URL for this, and I'll paste it in my OneNote. All right, here we go. Perfect. Okay, great. Yeah, if you have questions, go to this room. Okay, perfect. Okay, let me actually just tweet this as well, and then we'll go. All right, so questions should go here. All right, perfect. All right, guys, sorry about that. My bad. I apologize for the delays here. I don't have any hard stop, so we can keep going if need be. Okay, cool. So the topic at hand is publishing ASP.NET 5 apps inside Visual Studio. And I'm going to show you that we've got a different model than what we used to have before. And then I'll also kind of show you what would be the experience if we were to actually try and publish this from the command line as well. And then we can pretty much go from there. So let me just, I've created a new web application here. This is an ASP.NET 5 starter web template. And this build that I'm running is a CTP5 build. I have installed some different things, but for the most part, what you should see here should be available to you guys if you actually wanted to try this out. But if you had any problems getting it configured, send me an email or contact me on Twitter, and then I'll show you guys how to get started with it. So I've just right-clicked and said publish on this ASP.NET 5 project. Right now, we just have support for publishing to Azure websites and also publishing to the file system. We do need an updated version of WebDeploy on the remote hoster, so that's why we're supporting websites right now. Later on, you'll be able to, well, you could always import your published profile if you are going to a hoster, but the hoster would have to have the latest version of WebDeploy installed. And we'll go ahead and enable the full set of options when we actually release the final version. Okay, so I've got my Azure website dialog here. I'm going to create a new project. I'll just call it Syed K-Demo 2. North Central US. We go ahead and click create on this. So this will create the remote Azure website. And then after that gets created, the published settings file will be downloaded and then stored in my project. The password is encrypted and stored in a .user file that doesn't get checked in. Even if it does, it can't be decrypted on any other machine. So here's your WebDeploy settings. We've got a couple options for the KRE version that you want to publish to, and then the same options that we've had for the files for removing additional files and whatnot. We've got this preview experience that still works, so I could kick off a start preview here if I wanted to. In this case, I'm actually, I could publish here and I can preview and I can uncheck stuff, but I'm actually just going to go ahead and cancel this and save the changes. Let me show you what has been created. So up until this point, it's actually pretty similar to what we have in Visual Studio 2013 and 2012. When you create a published profile, you'll get this pub XML file under Properties, Published Profiles. This is the same format that it was in previous releases. It's just a standard MS build file. And when you publish, this file is actually imported into your build process. So, the build process is kind of, I guess it's formally left off to the runtime part, but, when you hit build in Visual Studio, if you needed to make any, or when you hit publish in Visual Studio, if you needed to make any customizations, you could do those in MS Build if you needed to for some reason. But I'm hoping that we don't necessarily have to go down that route anymore. But we still have this file. And one new option that we have here is called Use PowerShell. It's set to false by default. After CTP5, we will have a checkbox on the publish dialog that will set this property to true or false. And then in this case, I'm going to go ahead and set it to true. And then what I can do is, now I can add a PowerShell script into my published profiles that has that same name. So Syed K Demo 2. And then once the new file, okay, so I'll do PowerShell. And I got this from Sidewaffle, in case you're wondering where did that come from. So let me rename this file to Syed K Demo 2-publish.ps1. And in the later releases, when we do have that checkbox and when you check it, we actually will create a default file for you. In the meantime, I'm going to go and pick up a file here that I can add. This is going to be the file that gets added to your project. Okay, sorry about this. And let me show you the location to this file as well. I'm just going to paste it here. So this is all inside a GitHub repository. Let me just go back. All right, so this sample file is going to be right here. So let me just grab this and I'll paste it here. But so it's at GitHub, Syed I Hashimi, and then publish module. And then I have a sample directory there. So that's where this particular file is located. But if you have any questions about that, let me know. Okay, so here at the very top, we have the parameters that are declared here. So we've got publish properties and then pack output. Pack output is the location where your project has been packed, basically. There's a command line, there's an ASP.NET command line utility that we use that's called KPM. And on KPM, you can call pack. So you can say KPM pack, and then you'll give it the path to your project and a couple other settings. And then what it does is it packages your project into a folder. And then from there, you can take that folder and publish it to any web server that has web deploy, or if you have file system access, you can publish through file system here. And then publish properties is really just a property bag that's passed in. And essentially what that is for this published profile, every value that's defined here in the pub XML file will be passed in that dictionary, and your publishing password will be passed in as well. So we've got all the information from the publish dialog. And then we've got some helper functions here to see if Visual Studio is installed on the machine. And if it is, go ahead and load up we have a dependent module that we need from that location. But if it's not, let me scroll down here a little bit. If it's not, the module that we require is actually shipped in NuGet, and that thing will be downloaded to local app data on the fly and then imported with that particular version. And then when you get down here, we call publish ASP.NET. And then we pass it these properties and we pass it this pack output. If you needed to perform any type of pre-processing on the files, let's say you needed to combine or minify any JavaScript or CSS, you can just party on the folder you can just party on this pack output folder, and then when you call publish ASP.NET, it will just take whatever the files are that are in that folder and then publish those. And if you needed to make any customizations after, you can make those here. So I'm going to show you some of this. So let me, I'm going to go inside this PowerShell file, and I'm going to say inside PowerShell. And I'm going to use write output as opposed to write host. We should not be using write host in any of these samples because it's going to be hosted in Visual Studio, and write host won't work there. So definitely try to avoid that. So now I'm going to go ahead and right click on this guy and say publish. I may actually have to restart Visual Studio. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'm just going to close VS and restart it right now because I'm 90% sure that I would. So if you change the value of use PowerShell in your profile, and you've already loaded the publish dialog before that, you should go ahead and restart Visual Studio so that change can take effect. That's only in CTP5. After CTP5, we'll fix that bug. But in this case, I went ahead and just restarted that, and now I want to see that my PowerShell script is being called or not. So let me go ahead and right-click on this solution here, and then we'll give it a second to restore the NuGet packages. So once this restoring completes, then we can actually go ahead and publish the project. And just as an FYI, after CTP5, we've made a whole bunch of performance improvements to that restore process, so it should be much faster. Okay, so I have not yet published this project. Let me go ahead and click publish. And hopefully we should see the message that says inside PowerShell, and then we should see this item to start get published from that PowerShell script. And then I'll show you guys how can we make some customizations to this. And I could also show you how can I take customizations and use it across different profiles and different publish methods. All right, let me zoom in on this. Okay, so if I were to zoom in, inside the output window, we can see that message that says inside PowerShell. And then before that, we can see it using invoke PowerShell. If you don't see this level of messages, you can increase the MS Build verbosity to detail to see the additional details that I have. So we see inside PowerShell, and then it says publishing with MS Deploy. And then now we can see that we've got these directories. So I can say adding directory, and then it's just going to go ahead and add all the various different files. And then at the end, like what you see here, now it actually loads up your website in IE. And then hopefully this should run. And this was actually published with that script. There was no Visual Studio trick that happened. Let's take a look. Hopefully the app is going to work. If not, then I'm going to blame it on some bug in this particular build that I have. All right, perfect. So here is our running application. Let me check to see if there's any questions on Twitter real quick, and then if not, we can keep going, and then I'll show you how can we now start customizing this process, and then how does the Visual Studio dialog actually play in this as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to add a few different files into this project, and then I'll show you that we've also wired up the preview to that publish script as well. So I'm going to add 4 different files here. I'll add 3 files, and then I'm going to right click and publish, and then I'll unselect one of them, and then we'll see that those items do get skipped. All right, so I'll create sample 01, and then I'll just create a couple different samples as well. So I'll just do that one more time, or 2 more times, I guess. So that's sample 2, and then let me go ahead and add sample 3 as well. Right. So now I've added 3 projects to my solution. Let me go ahead and right click and say publish again. I'll go ahead and do preview here. Okay. All right, so now what's actually happening is kind of a, this preview part is not yet configured to go through that PowerShell script. So it's actually still just doing a direct MS deploy call here to find out what the diff is. and then it'll present the diff here. And then if I were to unselect or if I were to deselect sample 2, what happens is it takes the values from the pub XML file and passes it to that script. And then anything that's unchecked, that will actually be contained inside that publish properties property bag as well, as an exclude flag, exclude files array, basically. And then the PowerShell script will skip those files. So let me go ahead and publish this guy, and hopefully it gets skipped. And we can take a look at the result in Windows Azure and see that that file did not get published. All right, using PowerShell. And now it's actually calling web deploy. And then here we can see we have a file that has been skipped. All right, so now I can see sample2 skipped due to skip directive. Okay, let me go back in Server Explorer, and I'll expand the Azure Websites node. And then from here, I'll show you the Syed-K demo 2. Go into files, and then this is our www root folder. We can see I've got sample 01 and sample 03. Okay, let me open up the PowerShell ISE, and I'll show you the publish module that that is being imported, and then I'll show you publish ASP.NET. Okay, we have publish ASP.NET. So this is, if I wanted to execute any of these on the command line, this is basically how I can do that. So I've got publish ASP.NET, and then I've got the pack output folder. So this is just a disk path for where KPM pack output resides. And then this is what that property bag looks like. In many cases, you're really just kind of concerned with the MS deploy values. We can take a look at the pub XML, and we'll see that some of them you don't really care about necessarily. So when you're doing it from the command line, you may or may not need to set all those values. For instance, site URL to launch after publish. And PowerShell is not the guy that launches that. That's actually Visual Studio. So this setting, you would never probably want to specify that. Launch site after publish is the same. And then, for excluding files, we have some defaults. And if you need to override it, then that's when you would provide those. But otherwise, you wouldn't have to. The basic information you'd have to provide for web deploy is you'd have to say, hey, I want you to use web deploy. Here's my URL. Here's the app path, and then username and password. So this is how easy it could be to actually publish from command line using web deploy. The interesting thing is I could also use the exact same profile to publish to the file system. So if I wanted to go to a network path, I can basically enter it this way. So if you take a look at it, you can create the PowerShell PS1 file. Let me go back to that file in Visual Studio. And then the way that it works is at the end, you call publish ASP.NET. And then the module knows, the module will know a certain set of protocols that it can handle. And those are by default, what we have today is MS Deploy and then file system. And then they're just kind of registered as handlers. In this particular way, you can see how I register a handler here. I say, hey, here's a handler. It's named MS Deploy. And then here's the code for it. So you could also create your own custom handlers here. And you can create like a different values inside the publish profile that would then, instead of doing an MS Deploy, it would do a file system publish or a custom publish that you have. All right, let me go into the Jabber room, and I'm going to and I'll take a look if there's any questions on Jabber or in here. Okay, here we go. All right, cool. So now we've got some questions. I think, what version of web deploy? Yeah, so it'll be the latest preview that's out. I don't believe that it's labeled as web deploy v4. If you have any problems finding that, then hit me up on Twitter or by email. My email is syedha@microsoft.com. Okay, sounds like a version that hasn't been released yet. Yeah, so it actually should be out there as a preview. So I believe you should be able to get those options. Okay, so no option to exclude files from app data. Yeah, the option would exist. But let me think. I don't know if we're going to have I don't know if the option will show up on the publish dialog because I'm not sure if app data as a concept actually transfers over to ASP.NET 5, but I need to double check that. But yeah, it would be there if it is. Okay, that's in project. Okay, what's the naming convention for these files? Naming convention is the publish profile dash publish.ps1. So in this case, I have a publish profile that's called Syed K Demo, Syed K Demo 2, and then that creates this pub XML file. So the naming convention is just Syed K Demo 2 dash publish with no space whatsoever. So that's that. Okay, KPM. KPM is kind of the new NuGet essentially for ASP.NET 5. Yep, exactly. Okay, so they need Visual Studio. No, they don't need Visual Studio installed. So that's actually one of the big things that we've kind of set up is we want the script to be, hey, I've got a folder. And then I have a folder that has my KPM pack output. So I'll copy that folder and I'll copy the script to a different machine and then execute that script. For the Visual Studio customer, inside the script we have it'll look to see if publish module is inside the Visual Studio install folder. If it's not there, it actually will download it from NuGet. So that is happening down here. So if publish module is not enabled, we'll go ahead and enable this thing that knows how to download NuGet packages, and then we'll download the publish module with this particular version. And we haven't published this particular version yet. So if you want to try it, we'll have to change this version number, and that's where I can help you. All right. Let's take a look. Okay, assuming, so the registry, so definitely there's not going to be any Visual Studio dependency here. So that's just for the Visual Studio customer, so we don't have to keep downloading stuff. All right, can you publish with Core CLR to Azure websites? Yes, you can publish Core CLR to Azure websites. The publish process itself is going to take a little bit longer because Core CLR is, I think, 25 or 30 megs. So that'll take a little bit longer. All right, let's take a look. Are there any other convention-based hooks? Say first install upgrade.ps1. Ideally, people shouldn't have to be doing special things. We don't have any other conventions like that, but that's definitely one of the reasons why I'm having this hangout with you guys, is so that way you can tell me what's some of the stuff that we're missing and what are some of the features that we'll need to add into this. So that way we don't have any significant gaps that are out there. So yeah, definitely, David, if you have any specific things that you'd like us to consider, if you could shoot me an email at syedha@microsoft.com with more details, I think that would be absolutely fantastic to make sure that we're covering your scenario. All right, so that was that. Now let me show you, I kind of briefly mentioned if we wanted to, let's say, optimize images or perform any type of pre-process here, what would that look like? So let me pull up a different script that I have here that has optimizing images. So let me pull up this script, and then I'm going to go ahead and add that to this profile that I have. All right, cool. Let me pull up the, sorry, I just clicked on the wrong link here. Let me pull up the raw version of this and we'll take a look. All right, so I've got this function that says optimize images. I'm going to copy this, and then after I paste it, I'll go ahead and explain it to you guys. All right. Let me paste this in here. All right, let me paste that in, and then what I'll do is let me grab these guys. Paste that in. All right, and then I'll have to probably make a few changes, and then I'll just explain what's happening here. All right. So basically, let me take a look. Custom temp image, optimizing path. Okay. I need to call, let me just make sure that I've got everything right. I don't think I even need that one. Okay, this guy might not even be needed. Okay, web output root. Okay, so this is the pack output. So let me show you where's our pack output. And this is included in the output window as well, in case you miss it. but it's temp and then ASP.NET Publish. And then this is what our pack output looks like. So you have an app root and then a www root folder. And then for every command that is listed in project.json, you'll get a .cmd file here. And then the web root, that contains the content of the www root folder and Visual Studio. And this is where your static assets will reside. So here I've just created a folder. I've created a variable for that web root folder. And then I pass it to optimize images. And then this true flag says, even if the item has been optimized, just re-optimize it. Because otherwise it actually keeps track of those things. And then inside optimize images, what we do is if the Mads Christensen and I have worked on a couple NuGet packages that can be used to optimize images and then minify and compress CSS and JS. We just leveraged some existing XEs that were out there and we just kind of packaged it into a NuGet package. And then that NuGet package has a publish module that's on top, that's built into it. So what we do is we download the PS1 file, and then that will download all the XEs into local app data. And then we just call the XE to optimize the images at that point. So let me go ahead and save this. And then what I'll do is, let me grab the folder where all this was happening. All right, so actually that's the one that I'm in. Okay, so this is www, yep. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy this guy. Oh, you know what, I don't have any images in this project either, actually. Okay, so copying it didn't make a difference. But let me go, I'm gonna grab a few images here. So I'm gonna do images. Okay, and then I'm not even sure what these images are. So I'll just copy them and then go into my project and add it. So I'll just do open containing folder. Then I'm just gonna create a new folder here that's called images. And hopefully these are unoptimized, but we'll see. Okay, so that was that. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add a little line here that says optimizing images. Save it, and then right click again and then say publish. All right, so let's try it. Hopefully this works. I haven't actually tried this particular demo in like a month or two probably, so, but in either case, I'm pretty sure that it should work. Okay, here we go, calling image optimizer. So it says optimizing images. Let me zoom in. It says optimizing images, starting image optimizer on folder. And then this output is actually coming from the XE from image optimizer itself. So it just tells you the path of the file that it's going to optimize. And then this last column here should be the amount that these files were optimized. So let me unload this guy. So on images folder here, let me right click and say properties. And then let me go back into the temp folder. And we'll see. All right, so here is the KPack output. So let me right-click properties here. In this case, you know, it's not a big difference. It goes from 4.45 to 4.36. Odds are that I have previously optimized those images. I think what happened here, but nonetheless, we saw that the image optimizer was invoked. It did pick up the files and it did actually process these. But in this case, I just have, you know, some small amount of files that weren't really optimized very well. But what I want to point out is if you wanted to do this same exact thing in Visual Studio 2013 or before that, you'd have to basically, what you would do is you'd create a publish profile. And then you'd have to figure out how can you edit that published profile to actually run your image optimizer. So you'd have to understand our entire MS Build targets, which we've set up on publishing, And, unfortunately, those files are several thousands of lines actually to understand. So you'd have to have a lot of knowledge about MS Build, and then, even beyond that, a lot of knowledge about the web publish process in particular to actually do things. In this process, you didn't have to understand anything about MS Build. You didn't really have to understand much about the ASP.NET 5 publish process. All you had to understand was, hey, I've got this KPack folder, and then I'm going to execute some PowerShell to modify those files. If you didn't like PowerShell, you can create your own batch files and then call those from PowerShell. It's relatively simple. Or you can create your own exe to do whatever that's needed. And then all you have to do is just deal with those files that are in that particular folder. And then after that, just call publish ASP.NET. It'll take whatever is inside that folder and just publish it as is, and then go from there. So we kind of have taken things and turned it up on its head. So instead of customers having to figure out our publish process, we just basically say, hey, here's the exact script that Visual Studio will execute. The only thing that Visual Studio does on your behalf is call KPM pack with the right set of settings. But then after that, control is completely turned over to this script, and whatever is happening inside this script, that's what it does. So you can actually create a profile in Visual Studio that calls web deploy by default, but then you can remove all the actual web deploy part here and do whatever you wanted to do with it, whether it's taking it to a network folder, or I have a sample that actually publishes a web project into blob storage. And I could maybe even demo that for you. All right, let's go back to Jabber and see. Okay, let's take a look. Just one second. Let me go back to Jabber and see what some new questions are. All right, so that's cool. Just throwing it out there. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I'm really passionate about publishing here. All right, ASP.NET vNext deployment equals ASP.NET v previous deployments. It's slightly different MS deploy, and you don't get VS. I'm not sure what this statement means, but our publish process is a complete revamp from what we had before. So we've taken what we had before and just completely ignored it. This is an entirely new thing. Does this allow deployment with zero downtime, providing things like session isn't in memory? This doesn't help in those types of scenarios, but if you could definitely set up something that would have a zero downtime deployment with this, because whatever you can do inside PowerShell, you can now do here. So that's kind of what we're limited by. All right, blue-green deploy support out of the box would be excellent for on-prem. That stuff is normally deemed hard work. Okay, so that one I'll probably need more context on. Okay. All right, so it says, interesting, using PowerShell during deployment process, we put a gulp task in pre-pack. Yeah, so if you've put a gulp task in your pre-pack scripts, those guys, they get called because Visual Studio will call KPM pack on your behalf. Octopus can do that. Yep. Let's see. Indeed a fan of all things. Okay, great. Not sure why I get Syed K demo to dash publish is necessary in the next public. Seems like we call, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so if you check the checkbox that says use PowerShell, it's going to look for a file that has that particular naming convention, and then pass the publish properties to it, and then just pass control to that. So that's why we need that. PNG compression should actually be in the image optimizer. Okay. Zero config. Okay, cool. All right, what's source package? Yeah, so right now we don't have package support in this, but we will be adding that probably. I don't know if it's going to be in the next release, but it'll definitely be before the final release. If you're why add so much to publish? We're not adding much to publish here, to be quite honest with you. All we're doing is we're calling KPM pack. We're taking the output of that and just sending it to your transport, whether it's MS deploy or file system or later FTP. Okay, you'd much rather source package, which would then generate app pool called web setup. Yeah, so publishing from a package after the fact, we will have to address that, and I'm hoping that we can use the same set of scripts to actually publish a package after the fact as well, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. But I'm hoping that we can use the same script to publish either a folder or a package. All we have to do is see, hey, is it a folder that we're pointing at, or is it a package that we're pointing at? So it shouldn't be much change to actually do that. Okay, so now I've created a published profile here that we can that calls optimize images, and I showed you how can we take this published profile and from Visual Studio publish that using WebDeploy. From the command line, if I wanted to call that with WebDeploy, we actually just recently went over this, but let me go back to it and then I'll show you a sample. All right, so we've got publish ASP.NET. So here's how we would do it for WebDeploy. But now I want to show you how can I take that exact same profile that we use to publish with WebDeploy and actually publish it to a network folder. So let me open up a PowerShell session here. And then let me go, just going to set the pack output property here. Make sure this is the right one. Yep, so this is the one. So let me set that. Let me grab this. I'm going to create a new file and just put this all in one line. So it's just easier for pasting and whatnot. Okay, let me grab this. I'll go ahead and paste it in. Let me grab this path. All right, so I'll CD into this guy. And I'll do site kdemo2 publish, and then I'll and then let me grab these parameters, and then we'll kind of explain it a little bit. Oh, publish dest. Okay, that's fine. Let me just cancel that. And I'll say Google Hangout. I'll go into ctemp publish. We don't have any, there's no Google Hangout folder there. All right, so let me go ahead and do this, and then we should see optimizing images, and then we should see the folder pop up here as well. Yeah, so here it's optimizing those images again. And now it's actually publishing to this folder. If I was to refresh, I see Google Hangout. Then I've got my www root, and then this should be the one that's, I think, 4.3, yeah, 4.36. Okay. So I've taken the exact same publish PS1 file and published it to a different protocol. In this case, that was WebDeploy. We could create our own protocol as well if we wanted to. Let me take another look at Jabber, see if there's any questions, and then if not, we might go to something different. Okay. All right, let's take a look. All right, the package stuff is a little bit of a red herring, I guess. Yeah, he literally wants to configure nothing at all. Given a website, everything is inferred. Yes, so we're definitely trying to get to the bare minimum amount of configuration as possible. Okay, why not create an old PS1 file, call KPM pack, make it do image compression, etc., then call MS deploy? Yeah, so that is pretty much what I have. So I'm not sure what the question there is, if it was directed to me. All right, there's a question for David. Okay, I do like the customizable pipeline image optimization stuff. Seems legitimately useful. The other big takeaway is, you didn't have to go and digest our target files. So if I actually have a blog post on this about how to actually take a 2013 project and compress and optimize images. I don't remember how many lines it was, but it had to be probably, I don't know, 100 lines of MS Build at least. And that's also understanding our MS Build pipeline and how to get that in. So it's definitely a sticky point for a lot of people. I personally like MS Build, but a lot of other people don't, and I totally get that. And we're just trying to keep things very simple and very straightforward. So all you really have to understand is, hey, I've got this folder. I need to party on that folder before or after publish gets called. And then, if you party on it before, it'll just publish whatever you had and then go from there. All right, well, let me show you something that might be a bit riskier here because I haven't tried it in a long time. But what I want to show you is, what if you wanted to do something totally different? And my example of that before was, what if I wanted a web project and instead of actually publishing it with web deploy or file system, I just want to take the contents of this and then publish it to blob storage. So let me copy this. I'm going to create a new publish profile. And the way that I'm going to do that is just copy my existing one. All right, so let me go into, that's not the right folder. Obviously, I have too many folders open here. Yeah, this is probably, nope, that's not the one either. Okay. All right, let me go back into my folder here. I'm going to create a new publish profile and a new script. So I'll just copy this pub XML file. Actually, do I want to do that? Yeah, I'll say 2.1, and then I'll copy this guy and do the same thing. Perfect, and then I'll copy this guy and rename it to 2.1. Publish. All right, so now where to go here? I should see these guys. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now I've got 2.1. And then let's go back to this guy, publish module. Yep, okay. So let me grab the items that I need out of here. So I'll grab publish folder to blob. And then I'm going to paste it. Yes, this is the correct one. All right, so now I still have this image optimization happening here. So this is publish folder to blob storage. Let me go back and see what else do I need to find. Yeah, I have web publish override blob. Yes, okay, perfect. Yep. All right, so now one change that I'm going to do here is so publish dialog only supports use PowerShell for MS deploy or file system profile. So we kind of have to hijack it. And the way that we do that is web publish method override. And I have to check this. Let me check that real quick, make sure that's correct. I'm going to go into my publish module and then say, look for over. Yes, here we go. Web publish override. Okay. This is kind of a short-term hack that I'm going to put in here. So this web publish method is the one that kind of binds the publish properties to the actual endpoint. And then I have the web publish method. This override will actually, it'll just override that. So instead of doing MS deploy, it'll call blob storage. And then there's going to be some settings that I need to actually add here for my blob storage. And those are the ones that I actually don't know, but so I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to complete this demo, but the concept was that I would add foo. Let me actually add a couple of samples here. And then the point is, I just want to show you that these values are being passed in, and then everything else is pretty much ignored. So what I'll do is, let me just comment everything out after inside PowerShell, just to show you that you guys do get the full control. And then how can we get these properties back? And let me, okay, that's fine. Yep. Let me go ahead and right click this, but right click and publish, and then we'll see that there's nothing else really happens if I click publish here. It's just going to print out those messages, and then that's really about it. But the idea here was, if I knew the right settings there, the publish to blob storage would be able to pull the settings out of the publish profile and then actually redirect my publish into blob storage instead of the normal web deploy or the normal file system publish here. It's still doing, oh, you know what? I actually published on the wrong profile. I'm sorry. Once this is done, I'll switch over to that other profile and then try that one. Yep. So we'll just go ahead and let this guy finish real quick, and then we'll see the other profile and that it's actually not doing anything besides what's inside that script. All right, web app 22, publish, and then I'll switch over to 2.1. Let's try it one more time. Cancel that. So this is still like the KPM pack that's being called right now. All right, let me go ahead and zoom in on this. But we see inside PowerShell, we see those two values that I printed out, and then it's immediately done after that because there's no additional work. We didn't do anything behind your back. Okay, perfect. Okay, our publish ASP.NET and associated PS modules commandlets open source on GitHub. Yes, yeah, that's the location. That's probably not going to be the final location, and we're not able to receive any contributions on that yet. If you're interested in contributing to that, I would definitely love to hear that, and I'd like to get these items moved into the ASP.NET repo, and then actually get contributions to it. So if you're interested, definitely do email me, and I can go from there. Okay, I like David's comment above, but not completely replacing PS1 instead of provide hooks. Yeah. We could totally provide some hooks here. The one reason why we haven't done that yet is because you can have multiple different published profiles. And the concept that we had was, these customizations should be kind of stored with the profile itself, and just make it real simple for folks to take the script and then publish it on a different machine. So if you had to copy one file versus 5 or 6, we wanted to kind of keep it more simple, so that's why we just have one file for now. But if pre-deploy and post-deploy is something that is going to be common and you want it to be shared across your published profiles, then that would be some feedback that I'd like to hear, and then we can start working on those things. All right, what happens if you don't let it publish finish? Does it fail transactionally? So that depends on how your script is actually set up. MS Deploy, they do have a concept of transactions, but I'm not sure how far that support actually extends, and I'm not sure how much it actually works. So in the script that Visual Studio is going to create by default, there's no transactions. If it fails, you've kind of failed mid-deployment, basically. And then there's no real way to roll it back. But that was no different than what we have today in 2013 and 2012. So it's basically the same on that aspect. Let me check Twitter here. I see a couple notifications. All right, did I miss it? Is there a recording? Okay, yes, you've missed it, and I believe there's going to be a recording, but I'm not totally sure. Okay, so so what do you guys think about the publishing stuff? Is it better that we're kind of simplifying things and going away from the 5,000 lines of MS Build, and then moving over to this kind of more simple approach where you can just party on the folder and go from there? Or do you guys want us to go back to MS Build? If you do, we can do that. Let me know. Okay, here's another question. I wonder if there's a standard like XDT would help. Might be able to. I'm not sure the analogy there, but let's take a look. Okay, script environment PS1 to deal with environment-specific things. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that on email if we can. Okay, so that was pretty much, that's most of my demo, and let me put up my email and my Twitter here to make sure that you guys know where to send feedback on this. And I'm still going to be hanging out, watching Jabber and Twitter in case there's any additional questions that come in. Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, MS build, kill it with fire. Okay, that's fine. No, new publish is an improvement. Yeah, of course. Okay. What about Paul? Do you think this is going to work with Octopus deploy a little bit better, or does it make things more complicated for you, or what? Any ideas over there? What about the concept of having a standalone profile, having a standalone script that actually downloads its dependencies as needed into local app data? Who are the target audience of MS Deploy, in your opinion? Well, I think MS Deploy actually covers a wide audience. So if you're publishing directly in Visual Studio, I believe there's a significant number of people who are doing that. So this is definitely targeted at those folks. But MS Deploy also has a command line, which is very robust and feature rich. So MS Deploy can also cover, enterprise type of scenarios, and kind of the only thing with MS Deploy is it's kind of you going down a rabbit hole, and the calls to msdeploy.exe are pretty complex, and they have a lot of quotes and a lot of semicolons, which make it difficult in PowerShell. But yeah, so I hope I answered your question. MS Deploy covers a wide range of audience, from your guy who's publishing directly from Visual Studio to the enterprise customer who's got, staging, production, and whatnot. All right, definitely like moving away from MS Build. Okay, that's good. Need decent documentation in any case. Yeah, so that's actually a very good point with respect to documentation. So in the MS Build world, you'd have to understand every single one of these properties, and then you'd have to understand all the items that we had and all the targets that we had to integrate into it. But now the thing which needs to be understood is what are these values that are coming in, and the stuff that you actually need to know there is pretty basic. Let me show you. So these are just some kind of basic settings. Oops, I've gone too far. Let me go back up all the way. Okay, so these just some kind of small amount of settings here. And I do have pretty good comments here as well. So this is the syntax for excluding files. Visual Studio passes it in this exact same way. We also support replacements in files. So if you needed to replace some text, you can do that with this. We've got app offline and whatnot as well. So that's kind of the syntax. From a documentation perspective, I'm hoping that we don't have to have pages and pages of documentations, because those, we've had a really bad time actually getting those created. So I'm hoping that we don't have to have a whole lot of documentation. But yeah, definitely I'm a fan of documentation as well. Okay, love MS Build, but I agree it's hard to get a handle on. Yes, that's my position as well. Kudu too, yes, so this would have some Kudu integration as well. Okay, Paul says really not sure. So far, it feels like it would be complicated. Okay, so Paul, definitely connect with me offline so we can make sure that your concerns are being covered. Yeah, project is compiled with MS Build, KPM pack is called, that becomes a NuGet package. Yeah, so the web project doesn't necessarily become a NuGet package. So if you have a web project that references a class library or a console app, when you call KPack by default, dependent projects will become NuGet packages and those go into AppRoot. But your web project isn't created into a NuGet package. There is an option to do that, but that's an option. And then this would work the same whether you chose that or not. Okay, having to put SDK in targets are no good. Right, so that's why we're trying to create it standalone, and whatever dependencies it has, hopefully it can just download it. Okay, I guess it feels like MS Deploy should be the path of least resistance for on-prem or single server shops by default. Yes, I would agree. Okay, then for deployment, we take NuGet package, unzip it, then call msdeploy.exe. Okay, so Paul, on Octopus Deploy, let's connect over email, and I'll give you a, maybe you can try it out, and then let's see where can we go with it, and then see what modifications we might need to make for Octopus Deploy. Yeah, image optimization could be something that happens on build, not deploy. Yeah, that's true. But the thing to keep in mind is with ASP.NET 5, the build step is actually really happening at runtime. So there is no real build here. But that said, the publish profile does participate in the quote unquote build that's executed in Visual Studio. So if you wanted to do anything in the formal build phase, you can certainly keep doing that in MS Build through the publish profile itself. The thing is, when you take your publishing folder and publish it with that PS1 file, obviously those optimizations must have already been executed. Okay, everything is always deployment rosy until schema changes. Okay, yeah, schema changes obviously cause issues. We haven't talked about any, and if you mean database schema, then we haven't talked about entity framework migrations, and we haven't implemented that support yet, but that'll definitely be coming. Okay, I feel like the dream story for MS Deploy is I have server and a website. I can literally call MS Deploy plus website plus server, magic happens. Right. Yep, nothing is in conflict and source control a few scripts. Yes, we're definitely trying to make publishing with Web Deploy as simple as we can. Perhaps if we could just have default properties for these PowerShell scripts. So the PowerShell scripts do have all the default properties, and then the values that are required to be sent in is actually the minimum values that we need. So here I specify MS Deploy, and then the minimum values that MS Deploy needs to publish is the service URL, the app path, username, and password. So you don't have to understand any other properties. Everything, we do have defaults for skipping, for all the different values, like deleting the files on folder, deleting the missing files, that we won't delete by default, obviously. So on and so forth. For file system, you just have to specify file system and then give the path to where you want to publish it. So yeah, we do have smart defaults, and hopefully you won't have to be specifying so many different values here. All right, not sure if this is answered, but are these bits you demoed for CTP or not? Yes, so what I'm demoing right now is CTP 5. One thing that I did point out earlier is in that open source repository, when you scroll down, you'll see that this guy says 1.0.0 pre. So this version has not yet been published on NuGet. So you'll have to update this, and it's probably 0.0.18-beta. But let me just double check it. The way that I'm going to find that out is just go to NuGet.org and then look up publish module, and then find out what versions are available here. Yeah, 0.0.0.18 beta. Yep, so if you put that, excuse me. So if you put in 0.0.18 beta, then the NuGet package should automatically get downloaded on your machine and local app data, and then it should go, and then that actually would show you what would be the experience for the non-Visual Studio customer, because those files are not actually shipped in CTP 5 yet. So yeah, that'll be your experience like from a different machine and whatnot. All right, let me go back to the Hangout. Let me go back to Jabber, see if there's any other questions. All right, passing a property bag to PowerShell for web deploy settings, if we can streamline that, would be a big help. Okay, yeah, so if you're saying you want to pass it to msdeploy.exe, then send me feedback on that, and then I can channel that to the MS Deploy team. But yeah, the setup that we have is just a property bag. All right, also, will this be added to VS 2013? Okay, so now what you guys are seeing here is only ASP.NET, only available to ASP.NET 5. This does not apply to ASP.NET 4.5 or before. So you will not see these features in 2013. And in 2015, they will only apply to ASP.NET 5 projects. They will not apply to the ASP.NET 4.5 projects. The main reason for that is because in ASP.NET 5, we're relying on KPM Pack to do the heavy lifting, to understand what files need to go into my project, and then we take that output and then simply publish that. If we were to try to basically backport this to 2013 and ASP.NET 4.5, that would be a significant effort. What I would recommend there is to create an item on the ASP.NET user voice. So it's aspnet.uservoice.com that says, hey, I want a first-class PowerShell experience for ASP.NET 4.5 apps in 2013. And then, if that item gets enough votes, then we'll somehow figure out how can we bring this experience back to those projects as well. But we would have to have like a good number of votes on that, because this is something that would take a significant amount of investment on our side to enable for 4.5 projects as well. All right, so we got some great questions there. Let me just check real quick if there's any other notifications in Twitter here. Okay, so I don't see any other notifications. This is really the first time that we're kind of I've presented a couple times before at some user group meetings, and then previously at the MVP Summit. But most of the previous presentations were with MVPs and whatnot. So this is our first kind of public, or this is our first like really public demonstration of this. So I know it's going to be something new to a lot of you guys and a different kind of concept, but I wanted to go ahead and throw it out there. And then I wanted to go ahead and put my information out there. So that way, if you had any questions or if you had any really big concerns about this, you could let us know. And, the opposite is really great too. If you send me an email that says, hey, I really like what you guys are doing on Publish, you guys got to keep doing more of this. That's really appreciated too, because then I can kind of get the good feedback with the bad feedback and kind of weigh it out. And then also channel some of that positive feedback to management saying, hey, they like what we're doing, let's keep doing it. All right, so I'll hang out. I don't have a hard stop. Like what I said before, so I can hang out for a few additional minutes. If we get some extra questions coming through, then I'll go ahead and keep answering those questions. If we don't, then probably what we'll do is go ahead and we'll end the call and then go from there. All right, I think it'd be really great to get a forum or something going where we can help input. Okay, so now for right now, if we want to have any conversations on this, let's have it on the issues page at this particular repository. I'm trying to figure out what the long-term home of this repository is going to be. Obviously, it can't be under my name. I'd like to get that moved into ASP.NET GitHub repository, and I'd like to get contributions accepted as well. But there is a tax that's associated with that. So if you're interested in contributing, please email me at syedha@microsoft.com, so that way I can get that way I can justify that additional tax and that additional cost, and that way we can actually get it approved for contributions in the future as well. All right, most interested, zero config options. Yep. Yeah, David, email me more about the zero config. I want to find out more what you want on zero config and what is it that we're missing here that we don't have. But definitely, we definitely want to make publishing as simple as possible from Visual Studio, from command line, from CI as well. And we haven't ironed out our CI story yet, but that's something that I'm going to be working on in the next few weeks. And then, if you guys are interested, maybe in about a month or so, what we can do is do another demo that also covers CI. And then maybe I can get my blob storage demo working at that point as well. That could kind of show you that. So if you're interested in something like that, definitely do hit me up on Twitter or by email and say, hey, have you made any progress on CI? If so, let's do another hangout. You're on the Kudu team. Yeah, no, I'm not on the Kudu team. I'm actually I'm a PM on the Visual Studio team that works for ASP.NET. So I work for Scott Hunter on ASP.NET tooling inside Visual Studio. I own the project system for ASP.NET. So the new project system and also the existing project system. Publishing is an area that I own as well. I'm very passionate about publishing. All right, not very interested in deployments. Have they plagued my life? Okay. All right, yes, absolutely interested. Okay, perfect, yep. Okay, well, yeah, definitely CI is very critical and very important scenario for us as well. We're definitely gonna get to that, and that's something that I'm looking at right now. And I think we're gonna make the CI story a little bit easier because you're really just kind of dealing with folders and whatnot. We just have to make sure that we've got the right dependencies set up on those build servers and whatnot. So that's something that we do have to figure out a little bit. But yeah, it's something that we are looking at. Okay, cool. I really appreciate everybody that came out, and I'm just going to put my email back here for another minute in case anybody missed it or in case anybody else needs to go ahead and note that. But yeah, definitely thanks for coming out, and I'm always available on email or Twitter. If you're doing anything with publishing and you got questions on it, whether it's ASP.NET 5 or not, let me know. And if you ever get stuck on anything ASP.NET related and you don't know who to reach out to, you can always start with me, and then I can kind of route you to it. Okay, cool. Thanks. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. If possible, I'll make the recording available as well. I'm really not sure how Google Hangouts works, but if it is possible, I'll go ahead and make it available so that everybody can download it and take a look at it offline. And let's just keep in contact. I definitely want this. I don't want us to do things in a black box to where we implement some stuff and then later on we realize that it's not the right thing. So this is the opportunity for you guys to let us know what we're missing, and then what are some areas that we can kind of improve on these things. Okay, thanks guys. Have a nice day, and we'll keep in touch on email. And I look forward to the next Google Hangout where we can chat again. Thank you.